Hello, welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here with us. Today is a video, well, it's a second edition of something that we did a while back and a lot of you guys enjoyed, reacting to hot takes. And well, Raiden put it out on Twitter for the USMNT fan base, the people that follow us as well, to put their boldest USMNT prediction for this new year of 2025. It can be related to USMNT as a whole, YNT as well, with the youth teams, the individual players, anything that's tied to USMNT as it was specified. And here's our reaction. So, and let us know already on the comments below if you enjoy this type of content, a little bit more interactive. We certainly do. So, Brayden, the first one right here. Mika Nelly makes the Gold Cup squad if Serginho Dest is healthy by then. I'm not sure what he meant by that second part, but your thoughts on this bold take?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we did this video in terms of hot takes a while back last year, and you guys really liked it. So we decided to bring back the style for bold predictions for 2025. And getting into the first one, by the way, if you guys are Real Salt Lake fans by any chance, check out Carson, does great work. But I think, yeah, he just had a typo here. He said if Dest isn't healthy. Emeka Nelly, as you guys might recognize the name from the most recent Camp Cupcake roster. He's a CDM / right back, which is why he was referring to if Dest isn't healthy. I think this is maybe a little bit of homerism because, of course, he's a Real Salt Lake player, but you can't deny he had a great season in MLS. I think very underrated player, and we should get a great look at him in Camp Cupcake because he's the only CDM there, and maybe he can fill in at right back. I just don't think his chances are too great because this is really his main chance to impress Poch. I don't think he's going to be playing right back position. I think he's going to be at the 6, and we know how much depth there is at the 6. Maybe if he got full 90s at right back, he could have a little bit more of a chance because our depth there is a little bit weaker. Dest should be healthy by then. If by the off chance he's not or Scally's not, after that it kind of drops off a little bit. You know, Fossey, Reynolds, Ariel, they're not all necessarily world beaters. Ledesma's there too. I think it's not necessarily the most outrageous shout out there, but I think it's definitely qualifies as bold because I don't think it's going to happen really.
All right, and going down, well, my take on it, I don't think he'll make it. I mean, this was his big audition. I don't think he'll play there either. And yeah, we're stuck. And I think we will take the Gold Cup a lot more serious than we have in history, well, recent history at least. So now moving on right here to TAC. Really nice to see him participating. We will lose both tournaments in our region, and there will be people asking for Pochettino to get fired, which will be nonsense at this point. At the end, we will be fine and be ready for the World Cup. Your thoughts, Braden, not only on his stake, but also on his thoughts that even if we lose both of them, it's fine. We'll be ready by then. It really is all about getting up to speed, and he needs to gel up the squad. He doesn't have much time, so maybe it is more for experience as opposed to success. How would you judge it? And do you agree with him that we will lose both of them and the fan base will react? Maybe not the fan base so much, but maybe the media will, because I know they raised their standards of critique this time around.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. Like you said, props to TAC for putting this out there and not only for participating, but I think this might be, I mean, we'll see as we get on. I think this might be the only negative bold prediction that we have in the entire list. So mixing it up a little bit here, I think there's a lot of layers to this. To start, there's the whole losing both tournaments thing. And I think it's maybe more realistic than we would imagine. I think obviously we need to go into both of them, of course, Nations League and Gold Cup, with the expectation of winning and with the reality that if we don't, it comes out as a failure. I think we should have the ambition to be the strongest team in CONCACAF. I don't think that's unfair to say by any means. That being said, Canada is at their best. They have a great team. They're gelling excellently under Jesse Marsh. Mexico are a little bit revamped now. I think there's definitely some tough competition, and we don't know who's going to be brought to the Gold Cup. In the past few editions, it's been a C team, mainly MLS players. I would assume that it will be the A team because that's the only tournament of the summer. Last summer we had, or 2023 summer, we also had Nations League, which is why the A team guys got the break for Gold Cup. But this is the last real tournament we have before the World Cup. You would assume that the main guys are going to be there as a preparation. I think it is very possible that we end up losing one of them. I don't know about losing both, but I think it's more than likely than not that we only win one of the two. In terms of people asking for Poch to get fired, I think that would be ridiculous, honestly, and I fully remain committed to Poch, even if we do lose both. I think it'd be just so stupid to fire a guy that quickly without even going to a World Cup when we've made this huge hire. I think it would just be very naive. And I do agree. At the end, I think we will be fine for the World Cup. As long as, at the end of the day, if we do lose in one of these competitions, we have to take it as a learning experience, particularly in the Gold Cup, where it is more of a tournament style, as opposed to Nations League, where we're just going to go into the semifinals in March. If we get knocked out in the Gold Cup at an earlier stage than we would like, we just have to take the lessons from there and make ourselves a better team for the World Cup. And I have faith in Poch as a manager and our players to do that.
Yeah, I will say I don't think we'll lose both. Maybe we will. I mean, it could happen. But I think that there will be some people in the media not asking for him to be fired, but being very critical of his work. And I mean, we've seen it already with the load management of minutes in the past. That was quite funny how quick they were to judge the manager after basically giving a slap in the hand for Greg for 3-4 years of mediocrity. Now moving on right here to a very bold take that I'm curious to see what the comments will think. People watching, Diego Cochin will be the USMNT first choice goalkeeper. Now this is for this year already, 2025. I mean, judging by the amount of game time that he gets and our number one gets, it could happen. But do you think it's way too soon, Braden? Do you think, I'll ask you this, maybe not the first choice, but do you think he starts a game for the USMNT this year?
I think definitely at least starting one game is a lot more realistic and achievable for him than being the solidified number one, especially within a year. I mean, a year is a long time, but for a kid who's currently playing for a B team, granted at one of the biggest clubs in the world, of course, but still in third division football, it's a really big jump to make, especially at the goalkeeper position that usually takes so much time to develop. I do know Marco is from Spain, so I think that's probably why at least part of the reason why he said this. But I mean, I do think it's possible that it could happen, especially if I mean, hopefully this doesn't happen, obviously, but if Turner were to get an injury or something like that and Cochin really took some strides, maybe Barca, I mean, we know their financial difficulties, maybe they're forced to sell Ter Stegen in the summer, Szczesny doesn't come back, they're stuck with Peña and Cochin beats him out. I think there definitely is a world where this could happen. And I mean, the fact that we have such a bad goalkeeper situation definitely helps him out. I do think he will play one game for the USMNT at least. I think that's a very reasonable expectation, especially towards the end of 2025 and some of these friendlies that are more to kind of experiment with what we have with the roster, build the depth a little bit. I think he'll get at least one game by the end of the year. Will he be the solidified first choice player? I don't think so, but it could happen.
All right. Yeah, I think I'll be honest. I just don't think he's going to start a game for the USMNT. Hopefully he does, but I feel like the safe choice, and I'm not critiquing Poch. I understand him just putting not only Turner there as he has been starting. I feel like the next up would be Schulte. I just think that would be the safe choice after him. Horvath, Stefan, those guys, I think Cochin can beat them. He's definitely going to be included because we're calling up 4 goalkeepers now every camp. But yeah, hopefully he gets a game. I think that would be already good enough. But thank you, Marcus, for participating. Moving on right here to a very bold take. Now, this one would be amazing to see. I mean, I would feel bad for the guy because it would be one of the best dual nets that we would recruit in the latest years. But he would likely be a bench because that's the one position where we have one of the very best in the world. We have Jedi there, but here we have Foulmouth commenting that Nate Brown will choose USA over Germany. Do you think this one will happen? Do you agree with this take?
Well, I will say I think this is one of my favorites in terms of if it were to happen, I think it would be one of the best ones to come true in terms of impacting the USMNT. I just don't see it, sadly. I think he's progressed too quickly at Frankfurt. I mean, the fact that he was left out of their squad for Europe at the beginning of the season and now he's winning their player of the month, I think it's honestly incredible how quickly he's risen. Unfortunately, we couldn't see that earlier on when he was at Nuremberg, or at least the Federation had, I guess, a few doubts, and that was enough to not convince him because he was open to the US and we just didn't push hard enough. And at this point, I think it would honestly be silly for him not to hold out for Germany. Honestly, I mean, obviously, we all want him to join the US as USMNT fans, but looking at it from a neutral perspective, it just makes more sense. I mean, I think he obviously has more of a connection to Germany, and Nagelsmann's already monitoring him. He said that publicly, and just being so young still, the age that Nathaniel Brown is, I think he has so much time ahead of him to probably get a call up. I think he will get a Germany call up this year for sure. I think he'll be a Germany regular by the end of the year. So if that's a bold prediction, I guess bookmark that. But that would be mine in terms of Nate Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Foul Mouth right here is right, but I just don't see it happening. And I will say, maybe this is a bold take. I think that the pathway to a starting spot for Germany is maybe easier than to start over Jedi. Honestly, I do think that, and he's way too good, way too young, and playing in Germany, too many connections there to not choose them. But moving on right here to another dual net, Henry Chase will commit to the USMNT in 2025. Now, this one I think it's more likely, but I don't know. I have my doubts as well. If you had to bet the house on it, Braden, or well, I know you're young, so you don't have a house. If you have to bet your life, do you think he will choose the USMNT or not?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think this is definitely one of the ones that US fans wants the most, considering the contrast in likes between this one and all the other ones we've seen. I mean, Edgar Moreno is very reliable traditionally, especially when it comes to dual nats. He knows his stuff. So, I mean, the fact that he's saying this, especially with the winking emoji, it makes me think he might know something that we don't, and it has me optimistic. I think that this one is so much more feasible than Nathaniel Brown. Not only, like you mentioned, I think Brown's path actually is easier with Germany. It's no disrespect to Max Mittelstadt by any means. He's a great player, but I just don't think he's at Jedi Robinson's level. They're the same age. When you look at the center backs between Japan and us, I think Japan do have the advantage. Plus, there's the whole culture thing of treating elders with more respect and letting them have their spots. I mean, I guess Poch is already doing that with Tim Ream here with the USMNT, but that's one of the big things in Japan. I think you'll know more better than I will, being of Japanese heritage, but Henry Chase has had difficulties with that recently, and I think it's made him consider the U.S. a lot more. And I mean, if you watch his interviews, it's clear that he's definitely American. And I honestly think that he will commit to the USMNT. I think this is one of the ones that will come true. I think we've been a little bit pessimistic in terms of saying most of these won't happen. I think this one, I'll put my neck out there that this one will happen in 2025.
Yeah, I didn't notice when I was reading it. I mean, Edgar is putting it out there. Like you said, he has a history of being very reliable with dual nets, and yeah, I think he's more inclined to choosing us now, but I still think if Japan were to call him up and we were to call him up at the same camp during the same period, he would still choose Japan. I think that Chase's heart is probably with Japan, but hey, I can definitely see this one happening, although I just don't think he will just right now, maybe after summer. But now moving on right here to Notting, putting the comment that we will have a world-class player. Well, some may say that we already do. Curious to see, well, based on his statement right here, Braden, if you were to pick a player to be classified as world-class, which USMNT player is closer to that? Now, I think this may be a hot topic.
Yeah, this is a hot topic. I mean, I think we could make a whole video based on this alone. I think, again, like you said, we could make the argument that we already do in terms of will we by the end of the year. I mean, it's already 2025. If you say that one of our players is world-class right now, it's technically done, right? I think that Anthony Robinson is the closest to that, if not already there. I think that's a bit of a controversial one just because, yeah, obviously Pulisic is a better player, but to me, and obviously the definition of world-class is very ambiguous. Everyone has their own opinion, and that's what makes this one so hard to predict. But at least for me, and I think a lot of people also see it this way, it's in terms of top whatever, however you want to say, top 3, top 5, top 10, whatever, top however many at your position. And I think if you look at the grand scheme of things across the world, Jedi is higher up ranking in his position at left back than Pulisic is as a winger, even as a right winger. So I would argue that Jedi already is a world-class player. I think it might be a little bit crazy for some people to hear that, but I think he's the best left back in the Prem, and I think for me that's good enough to consider him world-class. I think Pulisic has that ability on his day. Overall, I don't think he's quite there yet. There's just so many incredible wingers, but again, it really just comes down to your definition and what you think. So I think by the end of the year, you can look at this and say, maybe Jedi is world-class, maybe Pulisic's world-class, maybe someone else has a monumental leap, but everyone's going to have a different perspective, I think.
Yeah, It really is down to each one's criteria. There's no defined standard on what is world class or not. I agree with you with the sense that Jedi is probably top 5 in his position, top 3 maybe in the world. But I don't know. I have a little bit of a different criteria, but that's topic for another video. But hopefully we do. Hopefully, I mean, there is an argument that we could have 2 world-class players this year. We'll see. It would have to be ultimately a consensus between the fan base and even people outside of the U.S. that these guys are world-class. I think that that's part of the criteria as well. But moving on right here to Brennan Williams, thank you, thank you all of you guys that commented on this thread as well. But the USA will make it to the finals of the U17 World Cup. That's a huge tournament to look out for during the summer. I think it's a very exciting one, and it's easy to watch. It's not like the USYNT camps where we can't plug it in and make sure to watch them. So this is a bold take. Do you think we will make it to the finals? Do you think we can win it?
Yeah, I think this is definitely achievable. I think if you look at all of like really the hot take videos or anytime we talk about either the future of the program or the U17s in particular, I think I've always said that this group is special. This is the true golden generation. I've said that it's not what we have now. I truly believe that the coming generation is going to be even better, and I think that they already have the ability to make that kind of impact at the World Cup level. I mean, there's so many players that stand out when you have Kevin Sullivan, you have Matthias Albert, you have Julian Hall, Jude Terry. I mean, it seems like we're 2 to 3 players deep at every position, which is big because the fact that it is unfortunately towards the end of the year, I wish it was in the summer. That'd be great. It'd make it a lot easier for players to get released. But the fact of the matter is it does happen during the season. So there's probably going to be a couple players that aren't released. As long as we have most of the main guys, I trust the depth enough that I think we can make the final. I'm not saying it's a definitive, it's certain to happen. It takes place in November, by the way, that basically that whole month. So definitely the last thing to keep an eye on as we close out 2025 in a year's time now. But I think it's going to happen, honestly. If I had to make a prediction one way or the other, I would say that they will make it. It's not certain, but I'm a lot more confident than I've been for basically any youth team in the past. And I think that's saying something because we've had some pretty good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you're one of the guys that follows the USYNT the most. So if you're saying it, I'll have to go along with it as well. And also, I think that it's incredible, really, the amount of talent that we have, not only just because of hype, but how these guys are replicating their hype with performances, with signings from clubs abroad that are investing in them. So definitely a huge one. I would love it to see us make the final in any tournament, really. Now, all victories, no draws, no losses. I don't know. Hopefully, I mean that sounds nice, but I just don't think it'll happen. Now the next one right here, Henri Chase Propaganda. Nice name, by the way. Matt Turner will be dropped at some point or another out of the roster. I would just say my take on this with a simple yes. I agree. And what do you think, Braden?
That's interesting because I actually disagree with this one. I don't think it would be the worst thing for this to happen. And I think obviously I believe when I was looking through these, there's another one that's like this. We're just assuming that injuries doesn't count. I mean, if he gets hurt, obviously he's not going to be in the roster. That's not getting dropped. That's just not being available. I mean, we've seen this with so many players. I honestly think that Matt Turner is crucial for Poch, for better or for worse. It's probably for worse, to be honest, based on the fact that he never plays at whatever club he goes to. I think that's going to be one of the key things in the summer, to get him a permanent club, whether it's in the championship, even MLS, as long as he's playing consistently. I think that's the most important thing. I just can't see him getting dropped from the entire roster. Maybe Poch decides, okay, let's give Schulte a game, let's give Cochin a game, let's give someone else, Zach Steffen, for whatever reason, gets a game. I can definitely see him getting dropped for a game or two, but out of the roster entirely, I just can't see, because I think it's pretty clear that Poch has him as the number one. Those types of things don't really change quickly when it comes to the goalkeeper position, and keeping an established veteran like Turner in is the safe option. I think that's what Poch will go with. I don't know if I was him, I'd probably experiment with a couple other players, but what he's doing makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the part that he will be dropped. I don't know about out of the roster, but I think it may still happen. Honestly, I think it's 50-50 even on that. And now moving on right here to Zenbook. 2 dual nationals from the Bundesliga will debut for the USMNT in March. Would that be Henri Chase and Nathaniel Brown? I think March is way too soon, really. And like we said, I think we already touched base on this one, covering the other two. So let's scroll down. But thank you for participating as well. USMNT prospects, shout out to them. Noah Kai Banks will make his debut for Augsburg and USMNT. That's a very, very bold shout right there. Do you think that he would walk into the USMNT with the call up?
Yeah, this is well. I have to give this guy credit for a very good bold prediction. I do have to say this is an imposter. It's not the real USMNT prospects. But regardless, thank you for participating. It's a very very good bold prediction because this is one of the ones that it seems like a hot take because it's such a young player and an 18-year-old center back breaking into not only his first team. I mean, he hasn't even made his debut for Augsburg yet in a competitive fixture. He's played friendlies in preseason, even one very recently because Bundesliga was on winter break for a couple of weeks, but he hasn't played for them in a competitive match yet. Saying that he'll break through to them and the USMNT, it's a bold one, but I do honestly think that this one will happen as well. Even if we do get Henri Chase as a recruit, our center back position is very weak. I think watching the U20 World Cup towards the fall is going to be a big thing as well. If he's at that tournament, granted he could not be released because maybe he's a full-time starter for Augsburg by then, we can only hope. But I mean, honestly, if he breaks into Augsburg at that point, he's already at USMNT level. If you look at where the rest of our center backs are playing, I mean, we have guys like CCV and Trusty, no disrespect to them, but they're playing consistently in the Scottish League with Celtic. Yes, it's a Champions League club, but the league quality is in the gutter and they're still getting call-ups. So if Banks becomes a consistent Bundesliga player, I think he has to be in the consideration at least. And I mean, I personally believe in his potential immensely. I think he's one of the most talented, not just center backs, but prospects in general that we have. So yes, I do think this one will happen.
Well, that's interesting to hear. I'm not entirely sure really if it will happen, but hey, I would be very happy if it does. Now moving on right here to the next one, Jason Gergen puts right here that Haji Wright gets a transfer to Ipswich, scores the deciding goal to keep them up in the Premier League. That would be a story. I would love to see Haji Wright moving to the Prem. I don't know. I mean, it's a fairy tale story, but hey, I'm up for it. Do you think he moves to the Prem? I think that's a realistic question to put while you're answering Gergen's take right here.
No, I think this stems from recent rumors that Ipswich are looking at Haji Wright. There's another Premier League club as well that was looking for him. I believe it was Leicester. Yeah, it was. So the two newly promoted teams, they're both in the relegation zone. I wouldn't hate it. I will say he is coming back from an injury right now, so I do think maybe staying with Coventry for the remainder of the season could be the more safe option for Haji, and then gauging in the summer, especially because then you don't have the risk of going to a team, then they get relegated and you're back in the championship and maybe you're a rotational player and the future is uncertain. All of that, I think it's just a better bet to wait till the summer. I will say if this would happen, absolute scenes. One of the top USMNT club moments we'd have. And I mean, Haji Wright always pops up with those. We remember the iconic FA Cup run that Coventry went on last season, and he was a huge part of that. So it definitely wouldn't be out of character. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a good one to end it. Let us know if you want a part two. I mean, it's really fun to react to these, but we're approaching close to the 25-minute mark. So this one, Kim McHugh, or however you spell it, but he says that we win every game, and Pulisic scores. Well, he becomes the all-time leading scorer in USMNT history. I'm not entirely sure about the numbers, haven't checked it, but I think you need to score like a poker or a hat trick in every single game to do that. I'm not entirely sure because I think Dempsey has 60, 50, 58, 50. I think it's close to 60, and I think Pulisic is close to the 30s. I don't know if he's already over that, but it's a bit of a bold take. But do you think we win every game where that he scores, he continues to keep it up and be close to that all-time leading score? And now a more realistic one, when do you think he breaks that record, which I think it's imminent?
Yeah, I think we should move on to one or two more because this isn't really a realistic one. I believe Dempsey and Donovan, I think, are tied at like 57 or something like that, 56, around that area. It's not going to happen this year. I think it will happen eventually for sure, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, let's move to the next one. That's true. So USA Expat puts a very interesting one. Now, this is one to debate on. Tyler Adams, we need to prove to Poch that he's capable a capable starter based on his current form and not on his past accomplishments. I think this is something that's very fresh. This is why we wanted a new coach as well. A fresh new start for a lot of players. We've seen him give opportunities to players that didn't have them before. And with all of the baggage of who was in the leadership council or not, whether or not, Tyler hasn't had a chance to prove himself to Poch. Poch is a manager that likes possession as well. A lot of people put question marks on his performances there in terms of progressiveness. What do you think, Braden? Do you think he solidifies himself as the starting DM for Poch as well?
This is a very interesting debate because Adams hasn't played under Poch yet. He hasn't gotten an opportunity yet, mainly due to bad luck with injuries. But again, that has to be taken into consideration as well when you're talking about starters. You want players who are durable and can go out there. Unfortunately, we don't really have that for any of our players, but I think this is a very interesting one because we've seen Johnny play there, we've seen Tespin play there, we've seen even players like Aiden Morris play there. There's so much depth at that position. There's also, of course, McKenny and Musa can play in the double pivot. I think it's definitely our strongest position in terms of the quality going down the depth chart. Stay tuned for our depth chart series later on this year, by the way. That's going to be a fun one. But I do think, I will say this, Adams will have an advantage over someone like, let's say, like Leonard Maloney. If he were to break into the USMNT, I think Adams will have an advantage because of his experience as the captain at a World Cup. I think that's something that Poch won't take for granted. I think he'll really value that. I mean, it's an incredible thing to have on your resume, right? And I do think as well, Poch will value Adams' intensity. He likes the high energy pressing style of player. I mean, that's why Aronson seems to be a fixture in the 11 every game. I think he'll value that side of Adams' game. That being said, if he is in the double pivot, there absolutely has to be someone who's a wizard on the ball, like Weston McKennie next to him. But I mean, we've seen that work in the past. I don't think he'll necessarily walk into the starting lineup due to the depth. He is definitely going to need to prove himself, but I think he already is on a little bit of an upper playing field just due to his past experience and what he has already proven he's capable of.
Yeah, I think, honestly, he'll probably be the starter. And I think ideally he should be the starter as well. And you mentioned Maloney, just want to say whatever happens to him this transfer window, he can't go to Greece or Turkey, to these countries right there. But yeah, I think that Tyler, I agree. I think that he will, not only because of his baggage and his experience in the past, but where he plays when he's fit. The biggest concern is, can he stay fit for 2 months, 3 months? Well, always, ideally, that's what you want. So this wraps it up for this video since we're close to the half-an-hour mark. It was really fun. Let us know if you want a part 2, if you want a specific topic for us to react to bold takes to. Always up to suggestions. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.